Today we are going to introduce a new concept. It's called machines. But before we do this, we have to know some key concepts questions. Number one, what are the three ways of machine can make doing work easier for us? Number two, what's mechanical advantage? Number three, why cannot the work done by a machine be greater than the work done on the machine? Today we are going to introduce only key concept number one. Before doing this, we have to know that we have new vocab today, which are called mechanical advantages and efficiency. What's a machine? Yes, a machine is anything we use around us or a device that will make doing something easier for me. For example, I need to use a bottle opener to open the bottle for me so it makes the work easier. That's why we call it a machine. Or I will use a crowbar to lift a heavy rock or something so heavy. It's called also a machine. Why? Because it's doing the work easier for me. Machines, they can be simple machine or complex, as the bottle opener that we said, and also the crowbar that we use to lift something up. Machines, they make the tasks for us. They make it easier for us, but they do not decrease the amount of work required. Means if I needed 10 joules to lift something up, yes, the machine that I will use it will change my force, the force that I will apply, but to produce the required amount that is needed to lift it. So the machine will take my force, change it, and produce the work required for the job, which is 10 joules. It will not change the work. It will not change the amount of work needed. It will not decrease the amount of work needed to do the task. It will just make it easier for me by using or changing my force. So the machines, as we can see in these two figures here, they change the way in which the work is done, but they do not change the amount of work or the amount of energy transferred. So we can see here that this man is applying a force on the hammer to remove the nail from the wooden plate. So the force that he applies, it's called input force, that we can see it here, and the resultant force that is done or produced by the machine that he uses, it's called output force. The distance between the input force and the machine, it's called input distance, and the output force, it has also distance, it's called output distance. So the force that you apply to the machine, it's called input force. The machine changes the input force to the output force. We can see here, this man is using a very small or little amount of force, but the output force is larger than the input force. So yes, machines now, they changes the force that we use. They change the input force and convert it to output force, which is larger or smaller. The amount of the input multiplied by the distance. We said before in the first lesson that work done equals to force multiplied by distance. So if I need the input work, now I will say input force multiplied by input distance. Let's write this equation here on the right side. So the input work done now equals the input force multiplied by the input distance. And the output work equals the output force multiplied by the output. This is the equations or the things that we have to know about any machine, that the input force multiplied by the input distance equal the input work that you do on the machine. The machine now will take this work and convert it to the output work resulted by it. So they convert the work, but they do not change the work done. They do not change the amount of work needed or required to do the task. Just make it easier for me. They change it, the amount of force, the input force, to the output force. Also, they make the work easier by changing the size of the force, by changing the distance the force acts, or the direction of the force. But remember, it doesn't change any work required. So when the output force now is greater than the input force, the output force acts over a shorter distance, as we can see in the figure in the previous slide. Now we have two questions applied, or we would use them to apply on the previous part, which refers to the force you apply to a machine to make it work. Yes, input force. Question number 2, what does a machine apply to an object? It takes the input force and apply what on an object? Yes, output force.